Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. My guess is that by now you've noticed that I have some new stamps and stencils out with PaperArtsy, and one of the samples that I created were these altered wooden pegs, and I did that with my new all ephemera set, the Advertising Edition, EAB50, my 50th stamp set. And these are fabulous little vintage German adverts from magazines from around 1902, 1903, I think some of them even as late as 1907. And these are all to do with words and pictures. So either they're selling photographic apparatus or cameras, art, fine art prints, or they're to do with words. They're typewriters. Schreibmaschine is a writing machine, so a typewriter. Or pens or pen nibs. So words and pictures. And obviously the joy of ephemera is layering them into all kinds of projects, journal pages, onto tags, all that sort of business. But I wanted to create some samples that would show off these stamps by themselves. So hence the wooden pegs, which I'd happened to see in a cheapy shop sort of a couple of weeks before my stamps were due to arrive with me, and I just thought, oh, I could probably do something with those. They're not hugely jumbo. This is a sort of normal size wooden clothes peg, which I'm also planning to do a couple of today, but that's going to need a really you could pick up a really nice sort of fragment of one of those, or you could go for something that's a lot skinnier, like those words there. Identification check could go on there. But I did also remember suddenly that tucked away in the craft room, I also have this truly jumbo clothes peg. I don't think I'm going to do that one today because I think that's probably an altogether more elaborate kind of a thing. Anyway, I thought I would take you through all I did to create these little embellishments, which I think are just going to be such fun on a dimensional project, or even on a paper project, or even just, as I quite often do, I have things sticking out of my journals, just holding pieces of paper together. But there's an important step that we're not going to miss out. If you take a look at this one, and on both sides, just notice the quality of the stamping on this side compared to this side. That's the key step that I just want to put in your heads, which is sanding. This is one of the PaperArtsy sanding blocks. Any sandpaper will do, obviously, but I've got those. So let's do this. So taking these apart is probably the hardest part of this. Well, maybe putting them back together. But if you do a sort of little twist and lift, you can kind of slide one side out and then slide the other side out. And you have to do a little bit of sort of wiggling, a little bit of tugging, but you can then get yourself those clear pegs. So all of these ones that I've already opened, I have already sanded, but it's not only sanding at this point, it's going to be sanding at the next stage as well, to just really give yourself the best possible stamping surface. Should we? Yeah, let's do one of these little ones as well. While we're at it. So the twist on this is a bit easier because that's a narrower bit of metal, but getting those back together will be interesting because I've never tried that before. Oh dear, yeah, those two. Okay, so just a quick little sand at this point. Then it's really very simple, this game, and you'll see. But as well as these, while I'm here, I just thought I'd show you. I thought they'd work beautifully as posters, so this was my other way of showing off just these ephemera stamps. So those brick wall backgrounds that we have made, I will link in the description below if you've missed those. So stony backgrounds, I made these ones with the PaperArtsy grunge paste, I think, rather than another texture paste, but there's Ranger texture paste is what I'm using in that first video. So yeah, take a look at that. But yeah, just creating a sort of wall full of vintage posters gave me great joy, because I love that there's imagery and incredible fonts on these. Yeah, it's fun to play with ephemera. So I have also got these couple of Tim Holtz sets. That's the Field Notes. I thought tickets could also be good. the curator labels, obviously. So if you've got any of those, obviously you don't have to run out and buy my beautiful new 50th stamp set. But yeah, if you're into vintage advertising, this is a good set to have to play with. Grand. So the first very simple thing is to give them a coat of paint. Any white acrylic paint you've got will do. Obviously, I've got some PaperArtsy paint, and I love these because you get immediate coverage. You get a good coat straight on. I love the chalky matte surface of them. But yeah, any acrylic paint. And clearly, you don't have to use white. It's not compulsory. But I just quite like being able to see my images properly. So one side, I'm going to go all the way along doing the top side, and I'm catching the sides as I do that. I'll let those dry, and then I'll go all the way along, having turned them over, and do the other side as well. So I feel like you probably don't need to watch me do all of that. You don't need to watch me paint clothes pegs. So I shall run away and come back when all of these have had a coat, at least on this side, and then I'll give you a quick glimpse at painting the other side, because it also gives you a chance to just fill in any of these side bits. Back in a sec. Just thinking another option would be to use some Crackle. You'll want quite a subtle Crackle because, again, you want to be able to see these images properly, but you could use a 2-layer Crackle like the PaperArtsy one, so a dark layer of paint underneath, then the Crackle paste, then a white over the top of that would give you a nice fine Crackle. You could use something like the Decoart Media Crackle paint, which one can put on in quite a thin layer, so you should get a very subtle crack. So yeah, why not? I'll do one of these before I get on to the other sides. I might not use this on the interior because you don't really see the interior, so it's a bit of a waste of Crackle paint, but we'll see what kind of surface we get with that. So a one-step Crackle like this. You could, of course, use the Ranger Crackle paste, but that's a bit thicker, so getting a smooth surface will be trickier. This will be a very subtle crack because applying it this thinly will be one kind of option. If you put it on a bit more thickly, obviously you get different kinds of Crackle, different sizes of Crackle and different depths of Crackle. So I'll do a couple with the Crackle, just to see, really. It's that lovely what if moment. What if, and why not? I can't remember now. Is that paint? That's Crackle. Doesn't really matter. Either way, I'm going to carry on, and I'll be back when I've got my pegs painted. Painted pegs. Here we go. So we're part way through the painting process. As with most one-step Crackles, you can't heat dry this Decoart Crackle paint. You need to let it do its cracking without the heating, otherwise it can't do its job. With the PaperArtsy Crackle glaze, you can dry the Crackle glaze layer, but not the top coat paint. I'll link to the video where we use the PaperArtsy Crackle so that you get that as well. But these ones that are just the Snowflake white, I have given a little heat dry to, so I'm going to fill those in while those Crackle pegs are crackling. And we'll see. I mean, as I said, it's a very thin coat. Let's see what we get. I'm used to applying that Crackle paint more thickly, but in order to have a good stamping surface, I just want to make sure I haven't got too many lumps and bumps and so on going on. So you can see I'm just getting down into those little cracks, and again I did the same there. The metal rod is going back in there, so perfection is not necessary down in that dip. You're not going to see that. The reason this brad awl is lying here is when you're taking these apart, it can be a useful extra tool for poking under there to just get that out. As it happened with the one that I showed you, I didn't end up needing it, but I have on a couple of them when they're really stiff, just a little pokey tool to get down under the wire to start off that little twisting motion can be quite useful. So again, I'm going to carry on painting these, and then I'll be back when we're ready to take the next steps. But yes, as I was saying, this is a good opportunity to just give an extra little coat to the side. Just keep an eye out for places where the paint maybe hasn't covered fully or you missed a bit, because this is your chance to make good any of those lost bits. And in fact, I noticed on one of these finished ones that there was a bit of edging that didn't really get a full coat of paint. So that's one of my finished samples that is now properly finished. There we are, look, so catching up after the fact. Right, we'll be back for the next stages shortly. So when I was making my initial samples, I discovered the truth of the thing that painters and decorators are always saying 9/10 of a good job is in the preparation. So I had sanded before I painted, and I thought, well, I can just now stamp straight over the top of whatever's going on here. But that's when I discovered that, yes, you can do that, and that's a lovely sort of weathered stamping. But if you sand the paint surface too, you get yourself a better looking stamped image in the long run. So grabbing that sanding paper again, I'm just going to do and it doesn't need to be much, just a really light sanding of that. And in fact, even to the finger, you can feel, because these PaperArtsy paints have got such a lovely matte, chalky, rustic feel to them, they do have that sort of chalky surface. And just that little sanding just gets us back to a smoothness. You can't, oh look, and I've weathered that beautifully right back to the wood. I might leave that as it is, or I might take it off. It's partly because a little bit of that paint wasn't quite dry. I added little extra bits and that's taken that off. And I think it's probably going to be worth it on this peg, these smaller pegs, because they were, yeah, strictly laundry pegs. Pinning out the laundry, been stealing them from the from the laundry supplies, and just a little sanding of those because they quite rough quality pegs to start with. I did give them a little sanding. See, I mean, I love that weathered look as well. You can see I've pulled quite a lot of paint again off those, and I really like. In fact, I might go so far as to sort of encourage it. I like the aging that you get. It's like that sort of beachy, I seem to be in a bit of a beachy mood. If you've seen my beachy mussel shell tags with the weathered picket fences, this sort of finish where we've knocked it back around the edges in places, I think is sort of, it's more interesting than perfection. I'm also really interested just the different wood they're made of. These laundry pegs, laundry wooden pegs as opposed to crafting pegs, are turning much yellower even under the paint. So it's just a sign that the wood surface or the wood itself has got a slightly different tint to it. Grand. So I think we could do some stamping now. Do I want to perfect these surfaces or do I want to leave them weathered? I sort of want to give a little touch to that one because that's quite a lot of weathering, but I am really enjoying the weathered look of those two. So I'm going to leave them as they are, I think. Let's just grab a little bit of paint from in here. Just top that up a little bit. Let's not make it too weathered. Yeah, that's nice. Just split the difference. Great. So where have I put wet paint? I should probably make sure these are fully dry before we go on to stamping. So I'm just going to use the heat tool for a moment and I'll be back to stamp. The other reason I kept these poster wall ones out was just because I wanted to show that I've been really enjoying doing multicoloured inking of these stamps to get that difference. And obviously I did similar on the pegs, but they're also really good in monochrome. So neutrals or nature's neutrals is what I'll be working with, but obviously you can stamp in any colour that gives you joy. I really like using the pen on these, so I think I'm definitely going to go for a pen 1. Let's grab an acrylic block, press that down. So let's see, let's take you and have you be a pen 1. So on these I did pen, and it's pointing in different directions. So it's pointing to the top of the peg that way, pointing to the bottom of the peg the other side. So you can have matching ones, but I think what we might do this time is going to be a touch more interesting and have different things on each side of the tag. So I'm going to go with a single colour because I just love what the pen looks like in blue. I think it's just perfect. Oh, look, marvellous. I hit the peg with the edge of my ink pad. I'm not going to let that worry me. Straight down, firm pressure, straight up. There's my safety pen. Just delicious. I love it. And in fact, I can put these together later, can't I? Oh, it would be quite nice to have a green one. So this is olive. That was Night Sky, Archival ink. This is olive, and I'm going to put in some touches of leaf green just to lighten it. And this time I might position it just a little bit lower down so that I make sure I get the tops of those words on. I wasn't fully paying attention. And I think I might also like the pen the other way up. So let's go like so. Grand. A green and a blue. Very nice. So I can put those together as one peg, or I can choose to mix and match, which I think is probably what I'm going to do. Let's just give that a little wipe. Not vital. Ink is not going to do your stamps any damage at all. I do love the font on this Zeiss camera advert. These crazy letters. You're thinking I think this one came from a 1907 magazine. So we're full into the transition from Art Nouveau to Art Deco, that moving into really funky shapes. And this one's a treat because you can go straight on to 2 pegs at a time with it. I did it in blues and browns and greys before, and I think I'm inclined to do the same, just because cameras feel like, I don't know, cameras feel like serious business. So this is potting soil going on, and what I might do, oh yes, look, that's a good idea. So that's potting soil going on. What I'm going to do is give the camera itself a little touch of, yeah, it says it's jet black, it's lying. I've topped it up with the Distress Archival black soot. So using the corner of it, I'm going to kind of tilt the corner of that to really hit the camera so that I can get some focus on that. And then I might just, I'm angling this ink pad to just sort of hit the edges of those. So let's hope these pegs are about the same height. One's a bit shorter than the other, but I think it'll work. Oh, I felt a little wobble there. Hope I haven't blotted and blurred everything. Oop, up it goes, down it goes. Okay, so that is because that one was a little bit shorter. I didn't quite manage to hit the inside of it. If I wanted to, I could risk just trying to fill that in with something, but I don't think I'm going to. What I am going to do is put some text at the top here. Let's go potting soil again. So on this stamp, you've got main word, camera, little text, and the peg is taller. So I'm going to go one at a time this time. This one, just watch out. Here's one of the things to watch out for when you're stamping onto these pegs. So because of the shape of it, when I press down on here, that's going to tilt up like a seesaw. It's like a hinge. So if you don't want that to happen, just pop a little something under the top of that peg so that you know you're going to get a firm stamping surface. So that's just to fill in at the top. And because those pegs weren't exactly the same depth, that's why I missed this little bit here. So I'm not making that mistake again. Just wondering whether I can. So it's in line with the eye. It's pretty much exactly the middle of the stamp. Just to fill in a bit of camera. Hey. There you go. Do you think I can catch that eye as well? Let's see if the eye is right on the edge there. Not bad. I mean, I could always use a bit of pen to just fill that in, but that's really nice. So that could be like so, that could be like so, so that then you're getting different things on each side of your pegs. Let's do some little fine stamping down here. So there's lots of really tiny text on some of these. This one that is another of the pen nibs, that would be really nice actually going along here. So let's do a couple of these using this, and I think I'm I think I'm inclined to go green again. For some reason, I'm really enjoying green at the moment. So I'm going to put on some olive, and I'm really sort of going across the top half of the stamp at the moment because I don't think any more than that is going to fit onto this peg. And maybe I'll just pop on some beach cruiser in places just to give a little bit of variety, again aiming at the corner. So once again, this is longer than, the peg is longer than the stamp, so I'm going to want to fill in at some point. I'm just going to put that under there again to get me the firm stamping surface. I'm going to go at this top half of the peg. Oh, I like that. And then I might put the other half of the stamp. Let's just ink it up again to make sure we've got full coverage. And I'm going to take that bit at this end. So it's sort of, it's backwards now, but I have got the whole of it, and I like that. I like that kind of slightly random thing that was going on there. I quite want to put identification check on at least one of these skinny ones. And I think we'll do that in maybe coffee. So this might be on this same peg. I might put these two together, or I might mix and match again. Let's pop that right across there, because I think what we can then do is maybe cheat a little number onto the end here. Well, that's 710 fit. Figure 1, figure 2, 3034. Oh, that one. There we go. That'll do it. So let's pop that there. Make sure we're the right way up. There's a C in the middle, so I can tell from the C which way up we are, I think. Yeah, there we are. And should we go same colour? Yeah, let's go coffee again. And I'm only going to need the beginning of this number. That's going to be plenty to fit on there. Oh, have I done? It's on the wrong end of the number. I need the beginning of the number. I'm having too much fun. That's the trouble. So I'm just going to put that 940. Oh, hang on. Is that my, yeah, it's my bendy end of the peg. So let's give it something to balance on. 940. Here we go. Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's maybe do some, what else could go on here? I quite like to get a little bit of imagery if I can. So let's see what it's like to try and catch, just having a look at this. I think I'd quite like these three, just to see how much I can fit on here. I'm definitely planning to stamp this one onto those crackled pegs, if indeed they do any crackling. So this is the one where I was quite enjoying having multicoloured stamping. So I'm going to do the top panel in Beach Cruiser and catch the words there. Going to put maybe some leaf onto the middle one. So again, it's about kind of angling the pad so that you are mostly hitting. And this isn't a precise science. That's mostly hit that central one. Then I'm going to have some night sky down at the bottom to just pick up that. I sort of feel like I haven't quite got the top end of that middle one. There we go. And if the colour sort of moves from one to the other, I'm happy with that. Let's go for a full length stamping of this peg. It's almost exactly the right size, this. I think it might be quite nice, rather than catching the middle, I'm gonna, no, they're not the same height, dash it. Can't be helped, I have to do one at a time. But I'm gonna go for this side on one side of the peg and the other side on the other side of the peg. So 1/3. Oh, I love that. Then that was that side, so now I need to go this side. Nice. So again, that could go together, that could be there, that could be there. So if you were putting them in a journal or something, one side is going to show one bit, the other side is going to show the other bit. And yeah, you can choose whether to match things or mix and match things. Right, let's see if these crackled pegs are ready to play with. Oh, well, that's a shame. No cracks. It's funny, even as I was applying it, I was sort of thinking this is a no crack. Oh, hang on. Can you focus, camera? I don't know if you can see, right there in the corner, I've got a little bit of crack, and that's because it was thicker there. So I think it's partly because it's very hot and dry here today. So this has dried almost too fast for its own good. But there actually is, I'll show you in the close-ups. It should be possible when we dive in for the close-up at the end to see. But there are places where it was slightly thicker, there is crackle going on. But there's not a great deal of it. And that's probably just as well, because I'm now thinking I need to do my sanding now, and that would probably knock out quite a lot of top layer of crackle. But it really, just feel it with your fingertips before you go. Do one quick thing and then feel again, and you'll feel immediately the difference that that creates. So it's not just about the Fresco chalk paints, having that chalky rustic surface. It is worth doing it whatever paint you use, probably. So what stamps are we going to use for these? I want another of these. I want a fuller one of these, and I think I might use this wonderful woman with the photo and the villa chalet, wooden chalet in the mountains for this camera maker. So let's go with another of these. I'm gonna go with the same color process because I love that move through from Beach Cruiser through to the nice bright green of Leaf. And the frames, I'm not really terribly troubled that the frame changes colour, but if that is something that bothers you, I'm going to go, in fact I might go for creating that text at the bottom and the text at the top into a little touch of potting soil, because that makes more sense of printing text. These are the adverts for the fine art prints. And I love that idea that we've got something in there that is all about artistry and art and so on and so forth. So these two pegs are pretty much exactly the same depth as each other. So I can feel that that's a flat stamping surface. So I'm going to take the risk and go again with a right across the board stamping of this one onto these two and hope for the best. Let's see what we get. So firm pressure, just making sure I do just a little sideways wiggle, not a wobble, but a wiggle. There we are. Lovely. I just love that. And I love it. I love it backwards. I love it forwards. But you can see on that one, the colours are mixing right there in that. It's almost like a little paint palette. That's what I love about this one. So having those different colours and having them even mix as you stamp them, I think is a really lovely effect. So again, I could choose to mix and match. Have one of these with the pen, one of these with those. Let's get the woman stamped because I love her. Oops, that's Snowflake paint that I've wiped off the mat. So I just need to make sure that's not sticking in any of these stamp bits. Paint on your stamps will cause a problem in the long run. Ink on your stamps is not going to damage their ability to stamp. If you've got paint dried in your stamps, that could affect the stamping quality in the long run. Grand. So here she is. And on this one, it's kind of choosing. I quite like having the sky in blue. So that's the Beach Cruiser, sort of round there. I quite like having her in the darker blue, the night sky. I think she looks rather good with her dress in blue. I like having plenty of green for the mountain greenery that she's visiting and photographing. So I'll take a good strong green up through the middle. And again, I really don't mind if things are mixing and matching and so on and so forth. Then I want to take a little look at the stamp and I can sort of see where that villa is. Villa, why do I keep calling it a villa when it's so clearly a chalet? Should we go with coffee? So again, I'm going to aim the corner of the ink pad and just touch it in approximately where I can see the villa. So that, done it again. Why is the word villa in my head this morning? Ah, I know why. It's because I did my word puzzles this morning, and V and I and L and E were all in the mix. And so I've been looking at them, trying to make the word villa happen, but there was no A, so I couldn't. So my brain is clearly determined to have a villa in the mix for today. I might put a little bit of the black soot just where I know there's text, just to darken that a little. we'll see what we get. So again, I can feel by just pressing my hand down that these two pegs again are giving me a basically flat stamping surface. So I'm going to hold my breath and hope for the best to get a full stamping across these two in quite a clean way. Little wiggle to just make sure it's going down in both directions. Interesting. So this is because, I suspect, this is because we're over the crackle. So even though it didn't look as though there was crackle going on, we haven't got as good as a finish as we had on the plain snowflake paint. I'm very interested in that. Lesson learned. Stick to the basic paints. If you go crackle, you're going to slightly diminish the impact of your stamping, but I mean, you can still catch those words there. And it is interesting that it is over the bit that is the most crackled. So what might be interesting on here, and this is why we've stamped in Archival ink, is to maybe use a little bit of inking to draw attention to that crackle. Since we've got that slightly less good surface, since we've got that slightly less good image, and if I show you next to a paper stamping, you can see the difference of that. Since that's happened, let's maybe use this one to do a little bit of inking round and maybe try and drop some ink down into those crackles to intensify their effect, because that'll be a nice way to create that. So on these, I can use I'm going to use Archival, because if I use Distress ink to ink around the edges, and this is optional, these ones haven't been inked around the edges. I didn't want any extra vintaging. I wanted that white, clean, sort of Nordic look. But if you want a more vintage look, you can absolutely do a bit of ink blending around the edges to darken those pegs. And I'm doing it with Archival ink because, as I just started to say and didn't finish, if I use Distress ink, and this is something that's going to stick out on a project, it's going to be out in the open air, the Distress inks are in danger both of rubbing off and also over time just of slightly fading. So using Archival for something that's maybe going to be out and about is usually a good idea, and this won't rub off. So I'm thinking, and just, yeah, take a look at the difference. If you do a little bit of inking, you get that vintage look. If you don't do the inking, you've got that kind of clean, bright Nordic look. So on this one, though, if I want to get down into these cracks, just wonder, is this going to be enough to pick up crackle? No, because it's not going down into, or maybe it is. This is also a really great way, if your image hasn't got all the way to the top or bottom of your stamp and you just want to sort of make it look cleaner, neater, and so you haven't missed out a bit, a little bit of inking will cover up a wealth of crimes and errors. This one, I think, definitely wants a bit of inking round, because that identification check wants to have a vintage look to it. What am I using for the, this is potting soil, but there is a bit of other colour on this blending sponge. There in fact probably is a little bit of vintage photo distress. So I now need to decide which one of those is going with that. Do I want to keep that as a whole? I think maybe I do want those to match, and then those can go either side, or do I want one like that and one like that? I think I want one like that and one like that. Okay, so this one I'll ink, and these two I'll leave Nordic. This one I'll ink. And again, you can go for the interior or not go for the interior. Those will go for browning. Those will go for not. So in terms of pursuing whether we want to try and drop some colour down into these cracks, I am going to use Distress ink for that. I'm just going to wet it a little bit and just try and send some ink down into, I can't remember which side of the peg it was on. There was good crackle in one place. But also you can see that just gives us an extra little vintage detailing. And or I could go back in with maybe a little pen. This is the Faber-Castell. These are water soluble. If I just wanted a little bit of extra colour, for instance on her skirt, on her collar, this is also worth playing with. If something's if something's gone wrong, it's rarely a complete disaster. I think very often people think, oh no, X hasn't happened, therefore it's all over. But no, there are ways of creating extra detail. I'm going to put a little bit on her hat as well, because it's just allowing me to pick back up, let the eye understand there's something here worth looking for. So the Faber-Castells are water soluble, so you can just pick that up. And that's just enough to give me that extra hint of image, so that my brain knows there's something going on there. I really can't decide whether I like the vintage look or the Nordic look better. It's going to depend on the project, obviously. Let's put one of these back together so that you can see it is possible. Let's go with this one. Here's gently vintage. That's maybe that's kind of the happy medium. These ones are strongly vintaged because we put extra inking over the crackly bits. These ones are strongly Nordic. This one's sort of somewhere between the two. Let me try and remember. I did discover the method that is the best. I need to look at a put together one. That's the way. So this is the way up things need to go. And I think I discovered your best bet is to get that in place first, so that you can then kind of go, okay, I need to pull this hinge apart. So here are these two things that are going either side. I need to have this in place, pull this hinge apart, slide it into its groove. There it is. That's positioned. Now I can go across, sliding that and this into position. Now you need a little bit of brute force, there's no question. I need to peel this one up. And this is where the bradawl could be useful again. A little tool, a little screwdriver. This needs to go into this groove. So you line it up again, do your best. Little wiggle, little scriggle, little push. And we're back together. Phew. Let's do that again. So having a peg that is put together will help you. Let's try and put one of these little ones back together, she said, realizing she hasn't got one of those to look at. So let's hope it works exactly the same way. I want to make sure I've got my coil in the right place. Then I pull this hinge apart. I hope the camera is focusing where we want it to focus. Pull the hinge apart and slide that into its groove. Ooh, it snapped back into the groove. So I've now got that just in the corner of the groove. I now need to wiggle it so it goes straight in. That's positioned approximately where it needs to be. And then again, with the brute force, I just need to really tug this half of the hinge away from the peg so that I can slide this bit of groove in. That one was actually easier. There we are, and that's remade again. So I'm going to do that with the rest of these and then dive in for the close-up. If you haven't yet seen the introduction to my new stamps and stencils, this is just one of 3 sets of new stamps, and there are also 3 new stencils. I will link that in the description below so that you can go and take a look. I will also link to the PaperArtsy Crackle glaze video so you can see that in action, and there was something else as well. Oh, the brick wall. I'll link to the original brick wall video. It wasn't making these particular brick walls, but it was the same process so that you can see that. I will also list as well as I can the ingredients that we've had today. Thank you as always for your company. I hope this gives you a little idea for how to make really individual, unique little embellishments for various projects. I haven't worked out quite yet exactly where these will go. And I hope it also lets you know that if things don't go to plan, if you find that something you had hoped to do doesn't work out the way you wanted, it's not the end of the world. There are ways both to amend things, make them a little bit more acceptable, but also just to live with those delicious imperfections. What I've got there is a beautifully weathered, distressed image that is very fun to play with. Grand. Thanks so much for your company. Hang around for the close-up and leave any comments or questions down below. It's always a joy to interact with you there. Thanks as always for your company on this creative journey, and happy crafting all.